Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from the Boxing Waffle. Unified champion Natasha Jonas could face IBF champion Marie-Eve Dicaire in a 3-belt unification later on this year. Nothing's official, no contracts are signed, but apparently the fight is a possibility for November or December.
Natasha Jonas became this division's only unified champion in her last fight against Patricia Bergul, then unbeaten Patricia Bergul.
Just yesterday, Harper II saw herself become a two-division champion herself at this same weight, the junior middleweight division. If Natasha beats Terry to the punch and gets Marie-Eve Dicaire in the ring,
that could end up giving Natasha considerable leverage in a rematch situation,
as a rematch between the two is becoming more and more a hot topic. Now that both fighters have moved up in weight, become champions at the same weight, there seems to be a growing demand for them to lock horns for a second time. Do a second fight.
It was the same underlying principle for both fighters, the same underlying principle for both Natasha and Terry.
In women's boxing, it's a little bit more common to see fighters fluctuate in weight, sometimes in dramatic ways. I mean, we see Amanda Serrano, a fighter who's been a champion at 7 weights. You look at Natasha Jonas, Terry Harper. These are fighters who used to campaign as low as 130 pounds and are now campaigning up there at 154.
And the underlying principle for both is the same.
They have big enough frames to carry the weight and still be effective.
It's not saying that either Terry Harper or Natasha Jonas are all that physically imposing. These are not big women per se.
But they are able to carry the weight and still be effective. Added to that, they're able to be a lot faster than your average junior middleweight campaigning in the junior middleweight division because they're naturally smaller fighters. So when they arrive at that weight, they have a speed advantage over most other junior middleweights that are out there. Natasha Jonas was considerably faster than Chris Namis and Patricia Bergul, two bona fide junior middleweights. We saw yesterday that Terry Harper was considerably faster than Hannah Rankin.
It's the same underlying principle. They can carry the weight and still be a little faster than your average junior middleweight.
Natasha and Terry have that in common, coupled with having big quads.
You know what they say? Power is drawn from the ground up.
Both Natasha Jonas and Terry Harper, they've both got solid bases. They both have very big quads. So they actually pack a respectable punch as junior middleweights coupled with the natural speed.
Yeah, you got a speed advantage because they're naturally smaller fighters.
Could we see these two locking horns again? Could we see these two locking horns for the second time? A distinct possibility for next year. This year, they're talking about putting Natasha Jonas in there with Marie-Eve Dicaire, this division's reigning IBF champion, having only ever lost one fight, just one fight, and that was to Clarissa Shields in what was this division's undisputed title fight.
So how does Natasha Jonas stack up against Marie-Eve Dicaire? What could a fight like that look like?
Well, Marie-Eve Dicaire is a completely defensively minded fighter. She's an outside jabber. She's a pure boxer. And like Natasha, she's a southpaw. Not big on power. Power would have to go to Natasha. I think that in that fight, Natasha Jonas would have the heavier hands of the two.
And she'd have to be the aggressor, as Marie-Eve Dicaire often makes herself a moving target.
She's not one for standing in one spot and letting the fists fly, and she's certainly no come-forward pressure fighter. One of Marie-Eve Dicaire's defining characteristics as a fighter is her mobility, her agility.
The onus would be on Tasha to catch up to Marie-Eve Dicaire and land big punches, land big shots, heavy shots.
Would Natasha Jonas be under any threat of being stopped by Marie-Eve Dicaire? Would she be biting off more than she could chew there? And
no, Marie-Eve Dicaire, she's not big on power. In fact, I don't think she has power. I don't think she could stop Natasha Jonas.
Remember, we're talking about a fighter that characteristically likes to move around the ring. Not a fighter that sets their feet and likes to sit on their punches. Marie-Eve Dicaire likes to fight on the balls of her feet, moving around that ring, compromises power for mobility because she's a defensively minded fighter. In this fight, I think Natasha would be the aggressor. It would be Natasha pressing the issue, firing straight punches, straight shots from the outside coming in order to close the gap on Marie-Eve Dicaire and inflict damage. Land eye-catching shots to either win the rounds or get Marie-Eve Dicaire out of there. And if I'm being honest, I think she can pull it off. I think she can do it.
Having seen Natasha in action at least 2 times as a junior middleweight, I like her chances against Marie-Eve Dicaire.
The story is they're supposed to be doing this in November.
That's just a little over a month away, a month and some weeks.
I gotta tell you, I'm very excited. I very much like this fight. I like what's happening at 154 pounds. In men's super middleweight news, per a tweet from Michael Benson, Frank Warren has stated that he expects Demetrius Andrade to pull out of the Zach Parker fight after he won the purse bid for $305,000 as the lone bidder. He said John Ryder would be next in line to face Parker for the WBO interim super middleweight title belt. And, Zach Parker versus John Ryder as a fight, that makes for all action. John Ryder, as you all know, is a mid-range to inside pressure guy. And Zach Parker, he's a mid-range to inside body puncher.
That's a great fight, if I'm being honest.
I don't necessarily know if the fight happens because John Ryder's name, at least 1 or 2 weeks ago, was attached to a potential Jaime Munguia fight set to go down under the Golden Boy Promotions banner on the DAZN side of things. Though that fight and that rumor, it hasn't materialized yet. So if John's not busy and he's not doing nothing, why not take on Zach Parker for WBO interim status? It's an intriguing fight, a very interesting fight, makes for an all-out shootout between mid-range and inside punchers. Though what this essentially means is that Demetrius Andrade,
that guy,
2-division unbeaten champion Demetrius Andrade, he has been effectively left out in the cold.
I understood Demetrius's logic at first.
I did. I didn't actually take issue with him vacating his WBO title to move up in weight and take on Zach Parker for WBO interim status in pursuit of either a Canelo Alvarez fight or a newly vacated title.
It didn't seem like a bad idea at first until he pulled out injured.
There's widespread speculation that he wasn't actually injured, that he didn't suffer any injury. Demetrius Andrade, having pulled out of fights in the past, or at least having the reputation to.
He does have that reputation.
The Jermel Charlo fight that he pulled out of years ago. Negotiations for a Sergey Derevyanchenko fight he's said to have also pulled out of as well. And this situation with Zach Parker, where he supposedly became injured.
There are a lot of people, they don't think he was actually injured. They think he pulled out of this fight the same way he pulled out of those fights. That's what people think.
That's how a lot of people feel. In truth, I really don't know how to feel about it myself, though ultimately the decision that he made is aging like cheese.
Aging like cheese. It's aging like organic produce.
Demetrius made the wrong choice. Demetrius made the wrong decision. Even if it didn't seem that way at the time, even if I didn't lambast him for it, for what actually ended up happening, he might as well have stayed a champion at middleweight and took care of his own mandatory challenger, Yanibek Alin Kanuli, one of the only guys that was pursuing a fight with him. You gotta remember the chronology of all of this. Frank Warren won the purse bid for Andrade versus Parker at least 2 times now. The first time, he placed a winning bid of $1.8 million. Decent-sized pot for a fight like this.
Yeah.
And Demetrius pulled out injured. Fight went cold for a while. The fight gets reordered by the WBO. Another purse bid ends up being held. And this time, Frank only bid $305,000. The size of the pot has shrunken considerably because Frank was the only one that placed a bid for the fight. The first time out, he had to ensure that he beat out Matchroom and Eddie Hearn for the rights for the fight. But this time, he didn't have to worry about that.
He didn't have to worry about competing with someone else for the rights to the fight this time, so he placed a very nominal bid, knowing he was the only one interested in staging this fight.
And for the massive waste of time that all of this has been, Demetrius Andrade might as well have just stayed at middleweight, negotiated with the people at Top Rank for a respectable purse, a decent purse, and defended his title as a champion, because at least as a champion, he had leverage. He has no leverage now. No leverage in this situation.
He's still an unbeaten fighter.
He still has an unblemished record, and if he's willing to make 1 or 2 sacrifices because he doesn't have much of a choice, there are still a couple of fights out there for him. A fight with former WBO super middleweight champion, 2-division champion overall, Billy Joe Saunders.
He's supposed to be on the rebound. He's supposed to be coming back.
Maybe you can set something up with that guy. I'm not going to tell you that Demetrius Andrade has this boatload of options. He actually doesn't. Going to the PBC doesn't seem to be one of them. Top Rank doesn't need him.
Neither does Queensbury. I don't know if Sky Sports could offer him anything. Boxer.
I mean, they signed Michael Hunter, right? So what's wrong with Demetrius Andrade? your guess is as good as mine. In any event, this is a guy who's going to have to make sacrifices. This is a guy who's going to have to make concessions.
You can't afford to be some highfalutin prima donna now. You can't do it. You ain't got the marquee value to justify it.
It turns out that the simplest option was also the best option for Demetrius. He should have just stayed at middleweight, defended his title against Yanni Bekalim Kanuli because he had a lot more leverage in that situation than what he currently has in this one.
And I don't know what the hell he's gonna do now.
Without condoning or condemning, Demetrius painted himself into a corner. I don't know how he's going to get out of this. Finally, in men's heavyweight news, unified heavyweight champion Alexander Usyk says Fury is afraid to fight him for undisputed. Plans to fight 3 more times.
And here's the thing. If he don't get Tyson Fury in the ring in a timely fashion, he's got 3 belts.
That essentially means he has 3 mandatory challengers in the queue. Alexander Usyk believes Tyson Fury wants no parts of him. The WBA, WBO, IBF Unified Heavyweight Champion from Ukraine called out Fury, the WBC titleist, for a full unification fight last month, immediately after defeating Anthony Joshua in their 12-round heavyweight title rematch in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Fury responded by saying he would oblige Usyk, but the two quickly arrived at an impasse. Fury wanted to fight by the end of the year, while Usyk, having just come off a tough fight, did not want to fight again until next year.
The disconnect here is that Fury wants these guys to fight him on a quick turnaround.
He says he wants Usyk by the end of the year. Usyk just fought. He says he wants Anthony Joshua by the end of the year. He just fought.
That's deliberate. That's by design.
You get all those months to upload videos to your social media and recuperate from your fights, but you don't want the other guy to have that same luxury. That's what that is. Usyk, in a recent interview, expressed his contempt for Fury, suggesting that the Manchester heavyweight is afraid to fight him. The thing is that everyone is expecting Usyk versus Fury fight for the undisputed championship, which hasn't occurred in the heavyweight division, Usyk said in a subtitled video posted on his YouTube channel, Usyk 17. Despite his toughness and how he is generally described, he is afraid. He being Fury.
Tyson Fury, out of his own mouth, said that he sees more value in a Joshua fight than a Usyk fight.
And I told you guys ahead of their fight, ahead of their rematch, that you don't get for Alexander Usyk what you get for Anthony Joshua, with or without a belt.
And now look who he's focused on. Look at who he's calling out. A guy coming off of 2 back-to-back losses. You think that's a coincidence?
No, it's just that I want to outbox Fury for now, said Usyk. The championship unification is far better and more important than just a fight for a title defense.
How people are reacting to this angle of the story depends on who you ask.
And it depends on the rapport that the fighters themselves, have developed with their supporters and their fans over time. For the longest time, Alexander Usyk has been a no-fuss, no-muss, no-nonsense customer, and he says he wants to recuperate. He's got old injuries that need to heal, and he doesn't want to fight again this year. He wants to fight Fury next year.
For some people, that's enough because they take Usyk at his word. He's not known for being a diva or a prima donna or any of those things.
The guy says it's been a rough year. The crisis in Ukraine, the Russian invasion, coming off this tough fight with Anthony Joshua, he needs a little bit of R&R. He needs a break, and for some people, that's good enough. For others, namely Tyson Fury and Tyson Fury's fans, that's not enough.
Tyson Fury himself feels like everything is supposed to happen on his time. And therein lies the dilemma.
If Tyson Fury really placed any value on the Usyk fight and becoming this division's undisputed champion, he'd just wait for the guy. Wait till next year and take him on then. But what he's doing is pursuing a fight with Anthony Joshua, which in some ways complicates the situation.
I mean, at minimum, he does seem a lot more focused on an AJ fight than an Usyk fight.
After my last bout with Joshua, I can fight in my top form 3 times more, at best, Usyk said. With Fury, Canelo, and the farewell fight at Olympijski, yes, with Canelo. He wanted to fight with me, but it will be a freak fight just for the sake of earning money.
The disconnect is, Usyk's not on Tyson Fury's time.
Tyson Fury can tell his fans and his supporters whatever he wants to tell them, but he hasn't convinced everyone. He hasn't convinced the entirety of the boxing community at large. There are a lot of people that actually sympathize with Usyk, knowing that he's the naturally smaller fighter, knowing that he just fought not but a few weeks ago, and they believe him when he says he's got old injuries that need to recuperate and he wants to take the rest of the year off. They take him at his word.
And they don't take Fury at his.
It's not that Fury doesn't have fans and he doesn't have supporters, but there seems to be an equal amount of people that don't take Fury at his word, and they don't believe a word he says. They look at Usyk. a guy who won every single alphabet title he's ever won on the road at both cruiserweight and heavyweight. They see a fighter that marched into Russia for the alphabet titles ahead of the Burat-Kisiev unification match, given Ukraine's history with Russia.
You know, they've never been neighborly.
They never have. But that didn't stop Usyk from doing what he had to do to get the fight done. They see that he defended his titles on the road against Tony Bellew, won the heavyweight titles against Anthony Joshua in Anthony Joshua's neck of the woods. They see a guy who's not a prima donna, a guy who's not a diva.
Now listen, Tyson Fury won all his titles on the road, too. The titles he won from Vladimir, the title he won from Wilder.
Yeah, he won those titles on the road. But if anybody's a diva here, it really is Tyson Fury more than Alexander Usyk. And Fury's focus doesn't seem to be getting Usyk in the ring. It doesn't seem to be that important to him. Not really. He said the only reason he'd fight that guy is for the money. Not the prestige, not to make history, not that monumental moment where he'd become this division's undisputed champion, the first heavyweight undisputed champion of the four-belt era. He's not concerned with any of that.
Usyk is. He's just asking for a little bit of time to rest.
All things considered, that really isn't a lot to ask. Not really, but Tyson Fury, in his fashion, he has a tendency to make things harder than they need to be, make things difficult. I mean, look at what he did to Vladimir. Vladimir had a rematch clause that Fury never honored because of his mental health.
Mental health, my ass. He was being investigated by UCAT and he absconded.
Everybody knows it. He made things difficult for Vladimir. He made things difficult for Deontay Wilder ahead of what was supposed to be their second fight. He decided that he was going to jump into bed with Top Rank, which made that situation difficult, and ahead of the third fight.
You know, he's supposed to fight Wilder for a third time. He starts calling out Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua starts negotiating with this guy.
Makes things difficult for Anthony Joshua because he's still all tied up with Deontay Wilder. This fucking guy is a nuisance.
If you were still all tied up with Deontay, then calling out Anthony Joshua wasn't necessary, but that's what Tyson Fury did.
Listen, Taya Fiasco, this latest situation, that's not necessary either.
Usyk wants a little bit more time to rest, and you don't want to give it to him, so you, once again, make things difficult.
None of it is necessary, but that's Fury's way, making situations difficult.